Well, hi everyone. Welcome again to another episode of the Race Tech Speed Tips by Chad and Bob. Tonight we've got a special guest with us, Mr. Pat Fagen from Fast Shafts. Pat's going to be with us tonight talking about giving us his knowledge about drive shafts and rear end gears and some of the drivetrain components that he works on and has seen things that have worked and things that have not worked over the years. So, of course, we have the questions open to any subject, but we do have a drive shaft expert online. So, tell us about fast shafts and how you got into this business, Pat.
Oh, Bob, I don't think we got enough time to do all this, but I'll try to make it a short story. In 1982, I kind of inherited an auto salvage yard, and back in the 80s, as you know, because you and I worked well together back there, and most all the race cars that were racing at the racetracks were running on salvage yard parts, and that was my deal with all the racers is, hey, you can come in, take whatever you want. All I need is you to put my name on the car, and poof, before I know it, we had 40, 50, 60 cars running around the country with Pat Fagen's Champagne Auto Salvage on it. And in about 1988, I had a 1989, I had a guy down the road convince me to leave my salvage yard because things were kind of slowing down a little bit at salvage yard. So I went to work for a drivetrain company called Certified Powertrain, and I learned a lot there. I learned a lot. And by 1991, I had had enough of corporate wall and decided to come back to my salvage yard and do one of many things. And one of the things I was going to do is we was going to build CV drive axles, but the following that I had in the salvage yard business, and then they found out I went to work for a drive shaft company. It just kind of followed me there, and I got convinced to start building drive shafts. So, real quick, I went to California and spent about a month with an old ironsmith out there, and he had a little drive shaft shop out there in Ignacio, California, called Lee's Drive Shaft Shop, and so I started working with Lee, and he taught me a lot. Made a whole bunch of little fixtures and gadgets for me to bring home with me, and talked me into bringing an old metal lathe home with me. He said, "You can have it, Pat. I don't have room for it." And I goes, "Oh, great." I mean, I was real excited. But now I got to figure out how to get a 2,000-pound piece of iron back to Iowa. But long story short, we started building CV drive shafts, and then we started building drive shafts and moved to another building, bought a balancer, started working with racers, and here I am. So it's been a long, very fun road. I've had some good employees. I still have good employees. We've made a lot of friends. Made a couple of enemies, but not a lot. But it's been a good road. I'm glad that I am associated with some of the best people in the racing industry today, and I'm very proud of that.
Cool. Well, that sounds good. And you travel the country to an ungodly amount of trade shows and racetrack events. And
Yeah, I started dragging an old trailer around with me. I had an old Itasca motorhome that I took to Boone. I don't know how many years ago. Shit, almost 20 years ago. But uh, and I've just kind of progressed from there. I go to Las Vegas. I go to a lot of Lucas Oil events. I go to a lot of USRA, USMTS events. I go to as many IMCA events as I can. One of my favorite two is probably Las Vegas and Boone. And I'll wander east of the Mississippi a little bit. We got a pretty good following over there in the UMP world, and you know, it's really hard for me to pick and choose my customers because all my customers got drive shafts, so I have to figure out a way to make everything balance out just right,
so
as I'm
now,
sure you all do.
is there any racetracks in Minnesota that you go to?
Oh yeah. I went to. My brain just went dead. I'm sorry. Fergus Falls. I've been to Fergus Falls. I've been to Deer Creek. I've been to the Harris Clash. I've been to a lot of other events that Deer Creek has. I've been to the 141 Speedway. The last couple of years, 141 Speedway has not, made it possible for me. I mean, it's hard for me to leave work on a Tuesday and go race, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then get back home. So, but yeah, I try to spread myself out. Obviously, this year it's been kind of a major pain in the butt trying to figure out, where do I want to go and chance my health. So it's tough. I'm really, really, really amazed that we're as busy as we are. I mean, but I don't know. Maybe it's the government money. Maybe it's people are bored. They're sitting at home looking at their race car and trying to figure out where they're going to spend the government money. But we do appreciate every bit of the customer service that we've been given.
So how about you, Chad? How was your weekend and what have you been up to?
Oh, it was a good long Fourth of July weekend. My employees talked me into giving them Friday off, which was okay by me too. Went to Fountain City to their. They had a big firecracker race 2 nights with the Dirt Kings late models and the USRA modifieds and the B mods, and we actually did some of our short track payback there. It was a 2 night event, so we offered up a bonus if anybody won both nights, and Flying Ryan Olson and the B mods took a little Weir's Machine money, so we were happy to help out a good customer like Ryan. But it was a great show. Bob puts on a great show at Fountain City there, and actual fireworks presentation, which was pretty badass. My kids are getting robbed of all their fireworks shows for every celebration around the area because of what's going on. So at least we can get out and go to some racetracks and gather and know that as long as we stay away, we're okay with the distancing. But so it was a good event, man. They were late models was a heck of a race at the end there. Them guys were driving, living, what out of them things. It was really exciting. So it was a good weekend.
Guy by the name of Brad Moore tells you, Pat, that he thanks you again for all the great drive shafts from Mansfield, Ohio. Russ Daniel, can you discuss pinion angle versus drive shaft angle and how they should be set?
I've always hated this question because I'll be honest with you, in my world, the most important thing is, the drive shaft length and the travel of the rear end. Very seldom does pinion angle enter into my world, or drive shaft angle, even less. Uh, Bob, you and Chad both probably work more with pinion angle. It's. I always try to refer people to the chassis builder when they have that question. Uh, I can give you an idea. I usually tell people, and especially in the modified world, to start at 6, 7, 8 degrees. So, but as far as the drive shaft angle, that's really never entered into. I apologize, but it's never entered into my needs. So.
Well, I know what we did when the quick change come into play in IMCA. That actually put more angle on the drive shafts because the drive shaft was a little lower. So we started actually lowering the back of the motor a little bit to kind of solve some of that angle. But I've just always focused on the pinion angle myself, and 7 to 8 degrees is what we pretty much recommend to everybody. If you're getting more than 7 to 8 degrees of pinion movement, you need to work on your upper link or your torque device or whatever, because you're getting too much movement. Because anytime you get that more than that, you're starting to put a lot of strain on everything. And I'm quite sure, Pat, you've seen U joints that have been gone above and beyond their strain level.
Yeah, we've started offering different styles of transmission slip yokes because a lot of guys, when they're working on the race car and they've got the rear end hanging, if they've got, say, an aluminum drive shaft in a car or a carbon fiber drive shaft with the big bulky aluminum ends, they find that when the rear end's hanging, they can't turn the rear tires because the quick change yoke actually crashes in to the yoke on the drive shaft. So that's Cade Dillard and I came to a heart-to-heart Jesus meeting in Cedar Lake about 5 years ago. I had given him or sold him a brand new carbon fiber drive shaft that had the great big bulky aluminum ends on it. And in about 6 laps, in the hot laps, he pretty much destroyed those aluminum ends on the drive shaft because his rear end in that MB Customs car was moving so much that it was actually crashing in to the drive shaft, the drive shaft yoke. So that's when I developed my steel-ended carbon fiber drive shaft, and it's been working very well since then. So, because I'd never experienced what I had experienced out there. I mean, Cade was really, really angry with me, and he said, "I can't believe I just spent all this money on this drive shaft, and it's junk." Well, I can't believe that his rear end was moving as much as it was. So, and then at the other end, we actually had to develop a wide angle transmission slip yoke so that when the drive shaft is hanging so far, you can actually still turn it. I mean, you and I and Chad and Bob both know that if a car is at that severe of an angle when you're racing, you're probably in a bigger problem than that because it shouldn't be that bad, you know. But I'll tell you, the wide angle transmission slip yoke is growing speed and popularity leaps and bounds. So, I mean, because most transmission slip yokes, as you can see here, the angle of the ears is real short, and you don't have hardly much room. Whereas this one here also, this one has a lot more room to work with. So it's been a learning curve. So
That's a cool
Well,
evolution.
yes, it
Pardon me?
is.
That's a cool evolution with the the changing of the setups and the more hike and the more misalignment, and then you fix that yoke problem there with that. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, and with the suspensions that we have today and some of the methods that we use it in, that's kind of something that people sometimes forget about is all that angle that the drive shaft's going to be taken and all that angle that all that stuff that's going on. So
So
it's
here, real quick, I'll show you the quick change yoke that we've developed. It's also got a lot more. It's got a couple other things involved that I'm really probably not smart enough to get into a conversation about. But it's an inch longer than a standard quick change yoke, so you can actually put a shorter drive shaft in, and it's kind of cool to have something like this available for especially when rules change and motor setbacks change, and guy's got a drive shaft that's an inch short. Just sell him one of these. So I've done that at both ends.
so what does something like that cost the racer, Pat?
Um, the rear end yoke, I think it's got a retail price of around $105, $110.
Okay.
So I mean, so what do you want to do? You want to spend $300 for a drive shaft, or put an inch longer quick change yoke in it and take off with it? So
There you go.
it's ugly, but it works.
It works. Yep, no doubt. So what else has been going on at Weir's Machine? Anything new that you can talk about today, Chad?
Yeah, we're excited. We actually last week we got our parts off of our first mold that we've had made. So we've been 3D printing a few items, and this is our cell phone holder that we had a vision. Austin said I need something to hold my charge cord, so I don't have to reach down behind my bed every night and pick it up. So we 3D printed a few, and then they've been selling pretty good. So we actually had a mold made that we can mass produce these and try and meet the price that everybody wants to pay. So we got the parts back. They're going to retail for $4.99. So these go good behind your bed or in your trailer or in your office. I got them pretty much everywhere I have my phone, so I can charge it, and then it holds the cord when you're not charging. And then on the same mold, we made our new sheet metal tools, which is our markers. So we made 3 different markers for when you're building sheet metal. So this is confusing with the camera. This one draws a radius on a piece of sheet metal. And then this one marks a 45 on the sheet. So the sheet metal goes in there like that. And then you can notch that. And then the other one marks the where you want to cut out the notch. So these are the three different marks that these make. So these are some new tools that we just developed, and we had a mold made, and so we can produce these and not have to charge 3D printed prices. So the 3D printer is amazing technology for being able to have a vision. Like, so many people come to us with, hey, you should make this, and or you should make that, and then we can 3D print it and we can have a part in a couple hours. But realistically, you can't mass produce off of a 3D printer. It's not cost effective. So actually, that mold was built by an ex-racer that used to race back in the 80s with Dick Trickle and the boys. And he has a mold making shop about 40 minutes from here. So it was pretty cool to have him make it. And then, I took my dad with to go pick the parts up, which was pretty cool because he used to race at the track that my dad promoted. And so that was pretty neat. So
Cool.
We're excited about next week. We're having a race here locally, an asphalt race at West Salem, the track that my family promoted for 16, 18 years. So there's an asphalt series in Wisconsin that my dad was a part of back in the Dick Trickle days. So they're having a tribute race to him next Wednesday night here at the asphalt track. So if anybody's close to the area and they want a midweek asphalt show, it should be a pretty good showing. So we're excited to be a part of that. And the club wanted to do a tribute race to my dad. So it should be a fun night next Wednesday at La Crosse there. So.
Well, and I also noticed that one of your in-house representatives won on the pavement this weekend.
Yeah, old Stevie Bachman finally got her done. He
got her done. Yeah, I seen.
Took that fast shaft Bob Harris influenced Weir's Machine race car to victory lane. So he's a little taller when he got here this morning.
I bet he was. Yeah. Man, I'll tell you what, he was looking really good holding that checkered flag by that car. I mean, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, he's excited. We made just a couple little changes, on his car and got him dialed in, and he's going to be probably hard to beat now. So he's doing a good job. I'm trying to pressure him into racing that race next week, but he's already points racing. So because it's not a regular event for the Speedway, it's a super late model series. So hopefully I can convince him to join the fun. But he's doing a great job for us.
Good. Well, one of the new things we've got our new slider video that we filmed up there at 141, where you and Austin rebuilt the slider. That's going to be on the RTI Knowledge Center tomorrow. That turned out very well. Anybody that watches that will be able to completely rebuild their own slider by themselves. Very slick deal. And me being the videographer, it even worked out. I did, when I went back to the motorhome, I plugged those things into my laptop and I couldn't see any videos. So I was starting to panic, thinking I did something wrong. It just goes to show you got to look in the right places. So I got home and Garrett calmed me down and said, it's okay, we've got all that video, so everything was great.
Well, that's good that you got that ready to go, because this is, what are we, almost mid-season. You should be maintaining your drive shafts, your suspension cages, your everything. And I don't know what you got for advice on maintenance on drive shafts, Pat, but.
Well, it's it really depends on the drive shaft. For the IMCA world, that it's all steel and aluminum drive shaft. They do have the carbon fiber in the late models, but for the typical sport mod, hobby stock car, modified, drive shaft. If it was me, I would shove some grease in the drive shaft. Every time you're under that car. So if you go and you race Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you maintenance that car the next few days, I really suggest you put some grease in grease in the greasers. What we have come up with over the years, we've come up with a solid body, non-greasable U-joint, and for a lot of people, Kelly Shyrock, Jason Hughes, Zach Vanderbeek, just about everybody, they have requested me put solid body non-greasable U-joints in their drive shaft, because it's just one less thing they have to maintenance, the lazy racer. But the solid body non-greasable U-joints that we use, they're really, really cool. Bear with me just a second. I'll be right back.
That's a page out of my book. Run to the shop and get something.
Yeah, I'm like, come on.
Yeah. So anyway, the average U-joint has got, this here, real soft rubber thing in a grease. I mean, it's a good U-joint. I mean, if you maintenance your U-joint, you put new grease in it every time you're under the car, this U-joint's going to last forever. I mean, I've had people come up to me in the middle of Illinois or even at Boone and tell me, God, your guys' U-joints are awesome. I've had those U-joints in my car for almost 4 years. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, you're kidding me. But, if you maintenance it, it's going to be okay. It's really, really cool. The problem with these things is there's nothing between here and the inside of the cap. So what happens is you got metal on metal, and you let that thing get a little dry on grease, you're going to have wear. And so wear is going to create in play. You're going to get a vibration, and things go on from there. Now, we have two different types of U-joints available for the non-greasables. We have the Spicer one, which is what we put in all of our carbon fiber late model drive shafts. Well, down inside there's a real thin, hard neoprene spacer that keeps this journal away from the inside of the cap. Neatest thing in the world. You'll never get in play in one of these U-joints, as long as they're just not flat out wore out. The other thing is, instead of having that soft thing where, you guys all know that if this gets hot, it's going to expand, grease is going to escape. This thing here has got a triple lip seal inside there, and it can expand because it's got a nice hard piece of plastic holding it snug, so it'll never spread out. So we used to do Driveshaft for one of the best in the country, and he would send his carbon fiber drive shaft back to me every 50 nights, and I would take them apart. And really, the one that usually gets the most abuse is the one that's right here, because A, somebody over tightened the U-bolt, or B, too much pinion angle. So we would take the U-joints out of his drive shaft, his carbon fiber drive shafts, and we would put new ones in, throw it back in the balancer, and send it back, and he'd run it for another 50 nights. That's 50 nights of hot laps, time trials, heat races, B mains, and 50 or 100 lap features. So the solid body U-joint, in my opinion, is definitely the way to go. But they are more expensive, just like anything else. It's better. It's always going to cost more money. So that's about it. If you're a Saturday night racer, every time you're under that car, if you can't get to the greaser, go to the parts store and buy one of the needle zerts, and just stick that needle where that little ball bearing is in that greaser. Put grease in it, by all means. Grease it every moment you can. I mean, I've heard wives' tales all my life. Oh, you can't put too much grease in. You start squirting it out, and it'll all come out. It don't matter. We're racing on dirt. Put grease in it every week.
What about the exterior of the drive shaft? Like when rocks hit it, or when you get one where something like that, what does the racer need to be paying attention to there?
Well, in the steel drive shaft world, or the chrome moly, or the aluminum world, there's really not a lot you can do. I mean, the steel's pretty tough. The most popular drive shaft in the world that we build is our standard 2-inch 120 drive shaft. I mean, we build 5,000-6,000 of those things a year, and they last forever. I mean, the reason I like the 2-inch steel 120 drive shaft is the chance, if it does get flung out of the car because of some other reason, if it doesn't break and it gets flung out of the car and gets run over, chances of that survival is pretty good. Now, when you start getting into the chromoly drive shafts, if we're getting into thinner tubing, it's not going to survive. But in the crate racing world, you need to help that motor out every bit you can. I mean, if that my 2-inch sport mod chromoly drive shaft is about 4 to 5 pounds lighter than the standard steel one. 4 to 5 pounds is huge when it comes to crate motor racing. But I have learned over the years that in the carbon fiber world, if it was me, wrap it in white vinyl. I learned that from the National Guard up the road. I had a guy stop in here one day, and we were talking about it, and I asked him, I said, "Aren't the helicopter blades made out of carbon fiber?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "How do you protect them in desert conditions?" He goes, "We wrap them in duct tape or vinyl." He goes, "It really, really helps."
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Tip your camera, Pat. Tip your camera.
Tip your camera up.
Tip your device a little bit.
There you go.
Get your beautiful face in frame.
There you go. Question. A couple weeks ago, you mentioned preloading the left rear wheel after you scale the car. Are adding turns of the weight jack bolt on the left rear after the car is scaled? If so, how much would you add for a USRA B mod? Well, basically what we do in that situation, like on a B mod, what we're looking for there is to compress. In B mod, you should probably be using your USRA B mod. You're using a slider or a coilover. Well, you can't use a coilover. You can only use a slider. So what you're doing is you're preloading that spring on the slider. It's what we're trying to do is just get X amount of inches of load. So say, for example, if you've got a 100-pound spring, we're going to try to compress that 2 inches so that we have 2 inches of preload on it. And that's where the trick part is. Of course, you've got the ride height game when you can't completely preload it against a fixture like what we have on the A mods. But even the A mods, it's the same thing. We're still raising the ride height, and that's why some of these guys are starting to go with the softer spring and carrying the preload. It's a little bit different situation, but hopefully that will answer your question. Okay, let's see where I'm at here. Does clocking the left rear birdcage, top bar forward, bottom bar back, does that generally make the car extremely loose in?
Yeah, that's different from the standard zero index. So there's a late model trend of moving the top bar forward, which will definitely speed that cage up and build a tremendous amount of index very quickly, which will make the car.
Yeah. By clocking it, that would speed the ratio up. And once you do that, you're jacking a bunch of weight in the left rear when the movement comes into the bars. And anytime you do that, you're taking side bite out of it, and that's going to loosen it up. Pat, is there any reasons to choose a wide versus narrow yoke or short versus long, advantages or disadvantages to any of them? He runs an IMCA A mod, open motor with a 9-inch Ford, if it makes a difference. Second question, let's just answer the first one first.
Well, I started studying this idea many years ago when Gary Clark, Tommy Meyer, Kevin Stoa, Todd Shute, they were all running Ford 9-inch rims, and they all had the long, wide yoke in there. And Mark Noble was another one. And I could never really get a square answer out of him. Scotty Drake told me that's the only thing his dad had in the salvage yard, typical Scotty Drake answer. But one of the advantages of the short, wide yoke or the long, wide yoke, the U-joint cap that fits into that rear differential it's an 1.1 inch in outside diameter, whereas the average U-joint that everybody uses, it's only 1.16 inches. So Ford, back in the early Daytona days, they figured out that the technicians were over tightening the U-bolts. So they fixed it. They made the U-joint cap thicker so you couldn't crush the needle bearings inside there, because I wish I could run away real quick again and go grab something, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'll show you something here. Don't move.
Oh, we won't.
Wasn't planning on that.
The suspense is going to kill us.
I know.
Yeah.
So
God,
anyway,
yeah, he's pretty quick for an old guy. Damn.
so here's what a U-joint should look like. You cannot believe how many U-joints I've seen look like this. They have over tightened the U-joint cap so tight that it looks like you took a torch to it. I mean, these things got so hot, this needle bearing is actually welded to the journal.
You should have grabbed one of your billet caps then while you were gone, unless you have that right there.
I just happen to have that right here. You know, the billet caps, all of my billet caps are created equal. The problem is, over the years, people have taken a rear end yoke and they've messed it up one night and they stuck it on a belt sander. So they've changed the location of this. So then you got to take my cap. In a perfect world, you'd like to see this U-joint cap so that it has a little bit of a gap on one side, so that when you finish tightening it up, it tightens down on that. If you put this on and it fits nice and snug real quick, it's not going to do any good, because it's not tightening down on the cap. So you have to take this and put it on a belt sander and just remove a little bit. I've had some complaints recently that some of the manufacturers are changing this location. Zach Vanderbeek was a good example. He goes, Pat, I can't remove enough material. He goes, I can't get it tight. He goes, let's just switch back to the U-bolts. I said, well, whatever you want to do. But I'm going to say 95% of the time, this thing here, this is a badass piece. It's a billet cap. The bolts are grade A. They don't stretch. You'll never ruin them if you pay attention to them. If you got the time, and make sure that you got a little gap there, you'll be good. The other thing was, and I wish I was smarter, but when you change from a short wide yoke to a long wide yoke, obviously the yoke is down further when it's setting it right height. Bob, do you think by sticking that yoke out a little bit further and changing the angle of the drive shaft and the yoke, do you think that has anything to do with, obviously, a lot of guys are playing with pinion angle, and a lot of them are playing with the fact that they want to get the rear end to wrap up so that they feel like they're getting more forward bite. I was down at Lakeside, Kansas many years ago when Gary Clark was racing, and I was doing a lot of video work underneath cars, and he had a biscuit pull bar. That's when biscuits were just now coming to life back in those days, and he just couldn't. He had no forward bite. I said, Gary, you need to take that pull bar off and let's put a spring on. No, why is that? I go, well, because in my opinion, you need to wrap that rear end up a little bit more so you can get a little more forward bite. Well, my dad says that yoke never needs to go past center. I said, well, I don't want to prove your dad wrong, and I don't want to argue with you about that, but let's go ahead and put a spring bar on there and try it. And he came back smiling. He was happy because he was able to get more travel with the spring than he was the biscuits. So I'm not, again, I barely made it out of high school, so I'm not really smart enough to tell you whether that's a fact or not. Wayne Brooks told me, he goes, Pat, if you get that rear end traveling too far, you're going to get vibration and you're going to start breaking the tires loose from the vibration. Okay. So I believe, Kenny Gaddis in Hallsville, Texas, talked me into building this inch longer quick change yoke. Kenny Gaddis, that's the only thing he uses. Well, and Kenny Gaddis is getting up there in age, but he likes it. Will Krupp from Willie's Carburetor Shop, his dad is a freak on that chassis dyno he has over there. And this is the only quick change yoke he'll run on his car. Corey Crapster's another one. Corey Crapster likes it because it's so wide through here that he can get more pinion travel. So I hope I answered your question, Bob.
Okay, second question on greasing U-joints. I've heard do not over-grease them until they make that crackle sound. It's over-greased. Then is that true?
No, grease it. You don't know how much grease is inside that U-joint in the first place. How much escaped after a 35 lap feature, after the little rubber caps, after they got all hot and all the grease escaped out of it. How much is in there? I say grease it until it comes out. That's just my opinion, and I'm going to stand by it.
Well, our next question is from the famous stock car builder up in Minnesota, Mr. Paul Berger. He says, "Hey Pat, if you have a triple lip seal, where does that go on the shaft?"
A triple lip seal. Well, the triple lip seal is, hey, look at there. I was able to push out that little neoprene spacer I was talking about. You see that? Is that easily visible? The problem with that, let me answer this little exciting question. The problem with this is that Dave Eckridge, I sent him a carbon fiber drive shaft with this U-joint in it years ago, and he called me back and goes, Pat, that thing vibrates like terrible. I goes, there's no way, Dave. He goes, yeah, it does. I goes, well, have you had the U-joint caps off? He goes, yeah. I goes, did you pay attention to that little neoprene spacer? He goes, well, no. I goes, well, I'm going to bet you've got one stacked on top of another one, which is going to offset the U-joint.
Sure.
Cause a vibration. So that's what happens. So if you ever do use this U-joint, make sure you don't stack U-joint, spacer. But, there's the triple lip seal. I don't imagine you can see it real well in here, but inside that cap, there's you see a little triple lip seal inside there. That's a badass thing, because it can't expand. It can't go out. So it goes right there, Paul. There you go. Paul likes picking on me.
Next question, Pat. I am in a new car to me. Where do I measure from the rear end to the back of the transmission to find out the appropriate drive shaft length in the Northern Sport Mod?
Well, if you don't have a 8-inch transmission slip yoke close by or handy, jack the car up, put the jack stands under the rear end, so the car is basically at ride height. That's or as close as it's going to be for what we're dealing with. I tell people measure from the seal on the transmission to right here. Okay, give me that measurement, and I'll build you a drive shaft that'll fit perfectly. In a perfect world, in the IMCA modified and sport mod world today, I like to see 3 inches sticking out of the transmission setting at ride height. Okay, and that way you'll have 3 inches inside. As anything in sporting, people try to make things better and better and better. And I'm going to pick on Jimmy and Richie Gustin. Years ago, I would go up there and walking through the pits, and I'd look under their car, and oh my God, they got 4 inches sticking out of the transmission, setting it right. I go, you only have that much inside the transmission? Well, yeah, but that the car goes faster when I can, move the slip yoke in further while I'm racing. So I adjust my bars and my everything else. I adjust it so that I can. But what we did, we made a longer yoke. Instead of the yoke being 6 inches from here to here, my new slip yoke, which is a billet hardened polished yoke, it's 7 inches long. So you can have 4 inches hanging out, but you'll still have 3 inches inside. It's been real popular. The only problem with that is the transmission builders that are building the Power Glides and the guys that are building the Saginaws, they need to undercut their output shaft so that this will go in a complete 7 inches. A lot of the USMTS guys, a lot of the USRA, a lot of the IMCA modified racers are starting to switch over to this slip yoke. The Burt transmission will not accept it. It'll go in 6 inches because the stubborn Canadian, that's what he's going to do. He thinks the only long slip yoke is the 8-inch slip yoke. That's another good question, especially for a slip yoke. I get a lot of orders. People call me up and they say, I need a 2-inch drive shaft, 31 and a half inches long, and I need a 6-inch yoke. Well, this from here to here is 6 inches. So I have to school a lot of people over the phone because I call this an 8-inch yoke. And because all the yokes that I've ever built and worked with in my lifetime have been 8 inches from the center of this U-joint to here. So keep that in mind when you call and order a drive shaft. Make sure you have this information. When you say you want a 6-inch yoke, is it 6 inches of actual seal surface, or is it actually a yoke that's 6 inches from the center of the U-joint to the end? Because we do have that, and there are a lot of racers out there that use them yet. So I hope I helped your question.
Next question, this is for you, Pat. Do they make a non-greasable 1310/30?
No, they do not. So they don't do that. So what I have done, I've developed so especially for the guys that have the long, wide yokes on their Ford 9-inch rear ends, we developed a Ford 9-inch yoke that's long, but it takes the narrow U-joint because a lot of guys are starting to want to use that solid body, non-greasable U-joint. So we developed a long, narrow Ford 9-inch yoke. It's a pretty cool piece too. So they used to, but the popularity of it was so bad that it just wasn't popular enough. So the manufacturers quit making it. So I went ahead and spent the money, and I made a long, narrow yoke for a Ford 9-inch rear end. So.
Nice. Shannon says thanks for how he appreciates the information on how to measure the drive shaft.
You're welcome. Well, we really trying to do our best. If you don't have a slip yoke handy laying around, obviously what I'd like to have you do is put a slip yoke in the transmission all the way, pull it out 3 inches, and measure center to center, because that's how the industry measures drive shaft. One quick thing about U-joints, Bob, it's especially that 1310 to 1330 Ford 9-inch yoke. Years ago, when I got into doing this business, I talked to the APCO, one of the premier drive shaft component manufacturers. Nobody out there really made a 1310 to 13 big cap 1330 U-joint. So it's really hard to find this U-joint at a parts store, and if you don't have it in the APCO parts store, you're not going to find the U-joint. There's some U-joints out there that'll fit, but they don't fit real good. The other thing is, and I hate to say this to the world, I hate parts store U-joints because most of the parts store U-joints that are manufactured in the world are made in a foreign country, and they're not good quality. So I would suggest, if you're going to plan ahead, if you're going to change U-joints in your drive shaft, call one of your favorite store that has either mind the APCO U-joints or put a Spicer U-joint in it. Stay away from auto parts store U-joints. And I really hate to say that, but it's a fact. I won't install parts store U-joints when people carry them in my door. So.
Good to know. Well, if anybody else has any more questions, we've got a little bit more time here, and if there's any chassis questions or any other questions.
Pat, are you going to do that we did last year for the Harris Clash? Did you do some extra cool stuff there, or what's going on there? Figure that out?
Uh, yeah. I mean, all I need from you is the drive shaft measurement, Bob, and we'll build you a nice, pretty drive shaft, and we'll put the solid body U joints in it, and put one of our quick change yokes. We do sell the quick change yoke. We sell the standard quick change yoke that was made, 10 years ago that you have to use a spacer under it, or we have our new quick change yoke that the spacer's built into it. We sell quick change yokes to quite a few of the quick change manufacturers in the United States, and we've got a good relationship with those people. So yeah, I'm excited. I think the whole world is excited about the trophy that you have created for that Harris Clash, and I'm glad that you have involved me in it, and very proud to help you with that. And I'm very proud that Bob includes me and you and into that situation. We got to figure out a way just to make it a little bit lighter. I think we're going to get some. I think we're going to get some little kid like the DeYoung kid, just won last weekend down at Oskaloosa, his first sport mod race. I don't think he's going to be able to lift it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited. I'm going to have 40, 50, 60 banners with me. If you want a banner, come to the trailer by all means. I'll be happy to give you one. I'll have some T-shirts with me and koozies. I always carry koozies. I got koozies all over the world, I think.
And so for the racers, again, this year, you have put up that $50 per spot award for the feature winner. If the feature winner starts in 10th, that's 10 and wins, that's 10 times the $50. Or if they start in 20th, that's 20 times the $50.
Yeah.
So a pretty good chunk of change for somebody that's pretty fast that maybe didn't get a good draw or didn't do well in the heat race, but they got their feature program together. And then this year you've added another cool deal. It's once again, it's called the Driveshaft Fast Time Award. And what we're going to do is award whoever has the fastest lap of the evening in the sport mod and the fastest lap in the modified. And what were we going to award them, Pat? I'll let you tell these people.
I think I was going to bid in 200 and you was going to put in 800, Bob. I think it was something like that.
I don't remember the 800 part. The 200 part does stick right in my mind.
No,
of course,
I'll be happy to.
And since we're talking about the Harris Clash, we can't forget about the Weir's Race of Champions. That race is a cool race. It includes everyone who has been a champion that's running a current IMCA modified, and that race is $1,000 for a 10-lap shootout. It's $100 to start, $1,000 to win that deal, and they get a nice, cool little Weir's clock that's machined by Weir's machine, and Chad's smiling face to give it to them. So that's a pretty cool deal.
Yeah,
let's add just a little bit more. Let's do a Fast Shaft Fast Time Award for that race too.
Oh boy,
why not?
How much?
Sure.
$200. Bob's putting in 8. I'm putting in 2. No, I'm serious. Let's do it.
Well, that'll be fun. There's nothing better than a 10-lap dash for cash, man.
Absolutely. I mean,
I love them races.
Yeah.
Yep. Those deals are pretty cool, and it gives an opportunity for those guys that now this year Arneson's going to be in that race, and that was one of the things that when we were standing out there in Victory Lane, that he says, and I'm going to be in the Champions race next year.
That's cool.
So I thought that was pretty cool. So anyway, is there any difference in horsepower with the skinny drive shaft, or any difference in car turning up faster with the skinnier drive shafts?
Well, I can't even begin to tell you how long ago it was that Mark Elliott and I developed the 2-inch 83 wall chrome molly for the stock car. But in a mechanic's world or an engineer's world, that drive shaft shouldn't work. It shouldn't. It's too long. But Mark Elliott proved to me that it worked, and it's been very, very good ever since. Grabowski runs it. I mean, I can't even. Every time I try to figure out people's names, my brain goes dead. But Jordan Grabowski runs it, and obviously it works for him. So I truly believe that a 2-inch 83 wall chromoly drive shaft versus a 2.5-inch 83 thousandths wall drive shaft, it helps. It, and it's probably a bad example, but if you take a brick and you tie a rope to it and you swing it around your head, and then you add 1.5 feet to that rope, you can feel the difference. I got to think that, yeah, it's not going to win you races, but it's going to be a small piece of the puzzle to help you win races. It's going to help you accelerate. I've put some carbon fiber drive shafts in some stock cars throughout the country, and these racers are ecstatic. They said, nobody can touch me on restarts, Pat. So, the difference between a 2.5-inch steel drive shaft, which weighs approximately 18 pounds, or a 2-inch lightweight chromoly drive shaft that weighs 14 pounds. I think 4 pounds is going to help you. Anytime you can take rotating mass away from a crankshaft that's in line with a crankshaft, it's got to help. It's got to help. I mean, there's a reason they sell lightweight crankshafts, And for a sport mod, that's running a 602 crate motor, by God, by all means, talk to Doug Smith. Doug Smith has been running my 2-inch lightweight chromoly drive shaft in his hobby stock or its sport mod for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. We tested the 2-inch 65 wall chromoly drive shaft in Las Vegas about 8 years ago with Ryan Reuter. I thought Vegas and Ryan Reuter would be a good testament. It worked. It proved to me that with a 604 crate motor, that 2-inch 65 wall chromoly drive shaft is going to work. They've both been good sellers. Most of my warehouses that sell my product sell it. If you can't get it through one of your favorite warehouses, give them the dimensions, have them order it for me, or call me direct. Call Bob Harris, call Chad Harris. I don't care who you call. Just as long as you get it, you're going to love it. You can definitely tell the difference in the weight of those drive shafts.
Next question, what's the correct way to measure pinion angle, drive shaft angle, and transmission angle? Myself, I can't really tell you a drive shaft and transmission angle, but I do know the pinion angle. What we've always done is we went off the front side of the rear end where the panhard bar plate, pinion mount plate mounts, and that's what we use. The drive shaft and transmission, like I said before, when we actually angled with the quick changes, we lowered the back of the transmission, or what we did was we changed the spacers in the front motor mounts just to get a little of that angle out of there. I couldn't actually tell you the correct way to measure that.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm not an angle guy. We got our hands full enough just figuring out U-joint sizes and drive shaft lengths and slip yoke sizes. But I usually try to tell people to go back to their chassis builder and get that information.
Next question, Blaine's got a question. Got a 383 motor that lost oil pressure, water temperature got to 240, and lost all power. Any ideas? Wouldn't have a clue.
Probably blow it up.
I think it sounds like it's going south. That's all I think I could actually tell.
I'd call Kevin Stowe at KS Engineering, and
there you go.
He's got to offer.
He would be the man to talk to. There's no doubt about that. Mr. Garcia, Pat says, Pat made a custom drive shaft for me last year. It's the best money I've ever spent. In general, what's the adjustment would you make for a rough track condition? Well, if we're talking in general, I would probably be more of a shock question, where I would probably not have real big, heavy split valve shocks on the car. If it's really rough, air pressure on your tires. If it's a real rough racetrack, I wouldn't hesitate to put another pound of air pressure in the tires to kind of help take the load off of the tire. Then the next question is, this goes back to our original comment about preloading the spring. Yeah, when I was talking about preloading that spring, you definitely preload it against the chain when you have the car setting it at the height measurement. In other words, jack it all up and then you preload against the chain so that you can have that measurement. My GRT has multiple holes mounting the top of the rear end of the rear shocks. How should I use those adjustments? What that actually does, when you have multiple holes at an angle, you can change the actual angle of the shock. When you change the angle of the shock, you're also changing the rate of the shock slightly. There's a couple things that happen when you get the shocks so that they're narrower at the top and there's more angle, like on a rough racetrack or a high bank racetrack. It can help work the car be a little bit smoother, a little bit more stable. The car's kind of working in that triangular motion. But as far as the normal ones, I always use the middle hole of the three, and that's pretty much where we've always used it at. Got a guy here who wants to know how much a fast shaft fire suit would be if he wanted to buy one.
I have a special deal for people that like that, you know.
We only have 4 minutes, Pat.
Okay, so give me a call. I'll work with you. Last I heard, Brad was doing that Driveshaft suit for me for $550, $600, you know. And if you want to add sponsors to that, you can do that. But yeah, just give me a call. You know, I'm easy to find. Like, find me on Facebook. Find me at, you know, Google Fastbacks. You'll find me. So.
Next question. I squared my left side of my car on a set of setup plates. Should the left side stay square, running the same offset? Shaw recommends 2 off on the front and 3 off on the rear. If you go with a 2-inch on the front and a 3 off on the rear, then your left rear is probably going to be 1 inch inside. If you put a pair of 2s on the left side, I square that to the point where I scribe the tire. I stringline the tires so that the 2 left side tires are perfectly in line with the same offset, or a 3-inch wheel with a 1-inch spacer, so that I end up tracking those 2 tires together. What's the best way to tell you have? What's the best way to tell if you have drive phasing?
Talking about drive shaft phasing of the U-joints, or I'm not sure what that question's all about there. Might need more detail there on the drive phasing.
Kevin still appreciates your comment, Chad, on the referral. Chad added a right front drop cup. Totally shocked how much better the car was. Awesome product. Sport Mod Dry Slick to get more drive in the slick, rolling over on the right rear about 3 inches. Should I drop the spring rate to get more on the right rear, or heavier to get less roll? I would lean towards going with a heavier spring in that situation.
Yeah, if it's rolling over too much like that, you're probably overpowering the spring, and that's what's loose. So adding rate is going to increase drive.
Yep. And then since we were talking about the Harris Clash, once again, everybody, don't forget, it's August 4th, Tuesday at Deer Creek Speedway in Spring Valley, Minnesota. Registrations are open. Next question. Okay, looks like that has covered our questions. I want to remind everybody that all of our chassis schools that Chad and I did over the winter are, well, the Sport Mod, the stock car, and the 4-link modified schools are online. available to be purchased online. Plus, there's also the option of purchasing them in a DVD form. Brian's got a question. Is 1 inch of pull bar movement too stiff? Looking for more traction mid-corner. Where's puck pull bar?
Well, the most traction that you're ever going to have is a solid pull bar. So saying 1 inch is not enough movement is probably wrong. Our most, I don't know if it's an IMCA car, UMP car, Brian, but the IMCA USMTS style cars, we're going about an inch and a quarter, and the open UMP cars, the puck bar wouldn't be the choice there. So max traction is a solid bar. We have a little bit of travel in there just to reduce the shock in the tires, and more travel is not necessarily more traction.
Very true. If the pull bar is traveling a lot, it's not necessarily hooking up the tires. You're actually wasting time getting that to the ground. Anything that anybody wants to add? We're on the 8 o'clock time. Chad, you got anything else you'd like to add?
Nope, that should cover it for the night. We're excited. We're working on more new stuff. We're adding machines, and I'm just excited to see Pat Fagen again at the Harris Clash. So we hope to come out of hiding, and if you got to wear a mask.
I'm more excited about the fact that he's bringing his wallet this time.
Yeah, man, putting up some serious money there.
I'm like, damn.
Oh, Bob, you've been good to me for many, many years. We've known each other, I don't know, since 1985-ish, somewhere in there.
Probably.
It's been a good relationship. I enjoy you. I appreciate you. If anybody needs me, I love to talk to people on the phone. The best time to call me at 7 o'clock in the morning here at my shop, or call me at 5:05. It's hard to talk during the day. Our phone rings off the wall, and I'm pretty much a one-man band here. But, I'll be happy to give anybody my cell phone number if they want to call me early in the morning and they want to talk to me at a racetrack or anything like that. I'm always open ears. The best time to talk to me is when I'm traveling, or like I said, early in the morning or after 5.
All righty. Well, thanks again, Pat, for being on, and thanks again, Chad. Good, interesting conversation again tonight, and we'll see what next week brings.
Always
thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Hey, Bob, thank you. Oh, you too, Chad.